If you are a fan of film, you most likely have watched this year's movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It is leading the awards nomination for the Oscars. It is definitely a strong contender in Best Screenplay. And today I wanted to share 5 lessons I've learned by reading that screenplay. And hopefully they can be helpful for you when you're thinking of your own stories. So Everything Everywhere All at Once is a story about the multiverse, right? There's all these different possibilities happening. There's a lot of complex stuff happening. So what are some lessons we can take away for this movie that even though it's full of martial arts sequences and all this extraordinary stuff and the everything bagel, it still feels very emotional and grounded. Lesson 1, get to know your character. The first 10-12 minutes of the movie and the script are dedicated to getting to know Evelyn, our protagonist, played by Michelle Yeoh. We see Evelyn in her normal life, running a business and struggling with taxes, and we see all of her little flaws and wounds. She is not very nice to her daughter, which is it's going to become a really big part of the script. She's not a perfect person. She has flaws. She's not necessarily very likable, but she's very relatable. There's some hints of story that are going to happen about the multiverse and all that stuff, but the first 10-12 minutes of the movie are really dedicated into getting to know Evelyn. Who is Evelyn? What is her mundane world? What is her day-to-day world? We really need that in order to ground ourselves in any kind of story. If we don't get to know our characters, we don't tend to care about them very much. Lesson 2, bounce off the walls. It's really important for a writer to use the location that he has around him to get the story a little more dynamic. In the first few scenes of the movie, we see Evelyn walking around her laundromat. The laundromat plays a big part in those scenes. There's people cleaning shoes and they shouldn't clean shoes. There's this customer who always flirts with her, who swallowed the machine. There's the paint in the ceiling that's not the right paint. All of this stuff is coming in and interacting with Evelyn, and Evelyn's interacting with that. And that happens throughout the whole movie. She's constantly interacting with her space, especially when she's in the multiverse story. There's literally the hot dog hands. She's constantly interacting with the world around her. That is called bounce off the walls. If you have a scene where 2 characters are sitting in a restaurant and chatting, you could do that scene anywhere else. Then think about what's a way I can incorporate this restaurant into the action. Do I have a waiter that's constantly interrupting? Is there too much noise and they can't hear each other? Does someone spill water over the other person? Number 3, it's not a bad idea to have a character in your story that acts as a surrogate for the audience. And what do I mean by that? When Evelyn first discovers the multiverse and all the events that happen there, she doesn't know what those rules are. She doesn't know how to operate with these new powers she has found and this whole new set of rules in her world. Alpha Wayman does, and he constantly explains to Evelyn and therefore us what are the rules of this world, like universe jumping, for example. We don't know that. The audience doesn't know what these rules are, and neither does Evelyn. So Evelyn is acting as a surrogate for the audience. It's not a bad idea to do that when you have a very specific set of rules or a new world that you're trying to explore in your story. Really, really think about your antagonist and create your antagonist functionally. What do I mean by that? In Everything Everywhere All at Once, the antagonist, the villain that Evelyn must defeat, Jobu Topaki, is literally her daughter. Right? It's played by the same actor, and she has a hard time differentiating the two. Jobu Topaki is literally her daughter, but her daughter with everything negative and positive, but mostly negative that has ever happened to her. So Evelyn looks at this antagonist, but she sees her daughter, but in fact it's this creature that's trying to destroy the world and that thinks that nothing matters. So the antagonist in Everything Everywhere All at Once is really constructed to make Evelyn really struggle with her journey of having to defeat Jobu Topaki. And it is also tied to her character arc, which when we talked about, right, we get to know our characters and we get to see Evelyn's flaws and how she deals with her daughter. And that's going to be a big part of this movie, is this emotional journey of her reconnecting with her daughter after all the events of the movie and of all the saving the world stuff and saving the universe. Ultimately, it's about reconnecting with her daughter. So the antagonist is literally designed to be put in confrontation with Evelyn, her worst nightmare is to have to kill her daughter, right? But in this case, it's exactly what you would have to do in order to save the world. So when you're thinking about your antagonists, and that's true for antagonists and any other character in your story, think about them functionally. How will this character best serve my purpose in my protagonist journey? And lesson 5. Find the mundane and the extraordinary. That is something this movie does wonderfully well. Ultimately, we have kind of two separate plots happening there. We have the save the universe plot, right? And saving the world is at one of the highest stakes there could be. But it also feels very generic in a way because it affects everyone equally. However, in this story, what the writers very, very smartly did is that they found a very personal stake to Evelyn, which is saving her business. There's something very mundane happening in this movie, which is Evelyn is literally at the IRS trying to save her business. There's a tax appointment. There is nothing more mundane than a tax appointment and taxes, right? She lives in a laundromat. It's about her family. There's all this day-to-day stuff that we can connect to that grounds this movie in reality, while there is multiverse and hot dog hands and movie stars and all this awesome stuff that happens in the multiverse. The reason that multiverse means something to us is because the movie is constantly grounding us in reality. Ultimately, it's a story about Evelyn who wants to be accepted and appreciated, save her business, and then realizes throughout the movie that she must reconnect with her daughter, be more accepting of her daughter. She wants to be accepted by others, her hobbies, her business, and all that, but she realizes that she must accept her daughter in the process. So there's something very mundane, very ordinary in this movie, and I say that in a good way, that keeps us grounded. So find the mundane and the extraordinary. Saving the world, awesome stake. It's one of the biggest stakes there are. But for us to really care, it needs to be a stake that's specific to our character. In this case, specific to Evelyn. Reconnect with her daughter. Become a kinder mother. Save her business. Save her marriage, right? All this stuff is what's grounding this movie in reality. It's what keeping us emotionally engaged more than the martial arts and all the awesome stuff that happens with the action sequences. Ultimately, we care about Evelyn and her family. Evelyn reconnecting with her family, not being divorced by her husband, not being rejected by her daughter because of the mistakes that she's made. I hope that helps. Subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you next time.